What would you do if you discovered your husband's affair while 7 months pregnant, only to find out the entire relationship was orchestrated by billionaire predators who knew your secret, that you're actually worth more than all of them combined? When art teacher Sarah Mitchell's water breaks from the shock of betrayal, she doesn't just lose her husband Marcus to his mistress Victoria. She loses her newborn son Owen to a custody battle built on lies, forged evidence, and planted drugs. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Sarah Mitchell doesn't exist. She's actually Sarah Hamilton, the missing billionaire pharmaceutical heiress who's been hiding in plain sight for 5 years. What follows is a chess game of revenge where every player has a hidden agenda. The mistress? She's not even pregnant with Marcus's baby. The affair? Orchestrated by Victoria's father to destroy a business rival. And Sarah's own best friend? She's been recording their conversations for money. But when you've lost everything, sometimes the only way forward is to stop running from who you really are. And Sarah Hamilton is about to show everyone what happens when you corner a billionaire who has nothing left to lose. This is a story of betrayal so deep it'll make your jaw drop. Revenge so calculated it's almost beautiful. And a woman's journey from victim to victor that proves sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's becoming exactly who you were meant to be. If you want to see how a hidden heiress destroys an empire while rebuilding her life, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single chapter of this incredible true story. And if you're loving this, show some support with a like and share it with someone who needs to hear that rock bottom can be the foundation for your greatest comeback. The Oakland Community Arts Center smelled of acrylic paint and hope. Sarah Hamilton moved between easels, her 7-month pregnancy making her waddle slightly as she guided tiny hands through brushstrokes. These kids from the roughest neighborhoods in the Bay Area looked at her like she hung the moon. To them, she was just Miss Sarah, the teacher who believed in their talent when nobody else would. "Miss Sarah, is mine good?" asked Jaden, 8 years old with eyes too wise for his age. Sarah studied his painting of a sunset over buildings that looked suspiciously like the projects where he lived. But in his version, the windows glowed gold, and birds flew overhead. "It's not good, Jaden. It's magnificent. You see beauty where others might not look." Her phone buzzed. Marcus, again. Third time in an hour. "Important meeting ran late. Don't wait up. Love you and baby bump." She typed back, "Love you too," though something cold settled in her stomach. These late meetings had become suspiciously frequent since his company went public 2 months ago. Sterling Tech's IPO had made him officially worth $12 million, and suddenly their cozy life in Berkeley felt too small for him. "Miss Sarah, you okay?" Jaden tugged her sleeve. She forced a smile. "Just perfect, sweetheart." But perfect was the one thing her life had never been. Sarah had spent 5 years running from perfect, from the Hamilton name that meant pharmaceutical billions in board meetings and a father who saw people as chess pieces. She'd legally changed her last name to Mitchell, moved across the country from Connecticut, and built this quiet life teaching art. Marcus knew her as Sarah Mitchell, a nobody from Kansas who'd put herself through art school waiting tables. The deception had started as protection, but became a test. Would someone love her for her, not her inheritance? Marcus had passed that test, or so she'd thought. That evening, she arrived home to find Marcus's Tesla in the driveway, but the house dark. Strange. She entered quietly, not wanting to wake him if he'd crashed early from exhaustion. His jacket was tossed on the couch. Armani. New. When had he bought Armani? His iPad lay beside it, screen glowing with notifications. She reached to move it, to plug it in, when she saw the message preview on the screen. "Can't stop thinking about last night. You were incredible. V." V. Victoria. Her hand trembled as she touched the screen. His messages were synced, thread after thread with Victoria Ashford. She knew that name. The daughter of Robert Ashford, the investment banking king who'd helped take Sterling Tech public. But it wasn't the messages that destroyed her. It was the video, Marcus in a hotel room she didn't recognize. Victoria Ashford, all long legs and perfect cheekbones, wearing nothing but Marcus's MIT class ring on a chain around her neck. The ring Sarah had bought him for their anniversary with money she'd saved for 6 months. The video was dated 3 weeks ago, the night he'd supposedly been in Portland closing a deal. "Oh God," Sarah whispered, hand pressed to her stomach as the baby kicked hard, responding to her distress. "Sarah?" Marcus's voice from upstairs. "That's you, babe?" She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The iPad slipped from numb fingers as Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs, wearing only boxers, hair mussed from sleep. "You're home early," he said, then saw his iPad in her hands. His face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, guilt, then something else. Calculation. "Sarah, listen." 3 weeks, she said, voice hollow. "You've been with her for at least 3 weeks. He came down the stairs slowly, hands raised like she was a spooked animal. "It's not what you think. Victoria and I, it's just business networking. Her father, you were naked. She was wearing your ring. It doesn't mean anything." The words exploded from him. "Jesus, Sarah, I'm building an empire here. Do you understand the connections the Ashfords have? This is how the game is played at this level." "The game?" She stood, one hand supporting her belly. "I'm carrying your child, and you're calling this a game?" Something shifted in his face then. The mask of the loving husband cracked, revealing something colder underneath. "You wouldn't understand. You're content with your little art center, your simple life, but I'm meant for more than this, Sarah. More than—" He gestured around their modest home, then at her paint-stained maternity clothes. "This." The pain hit her like a physical blow, radiating from her chest through her entire body. Then another pain, sharper, lower. She gasped, doubling over. "Sarah?" The calculation left his face, replaced by alarm. "The baby," she gasped as warm fluid gushed down her legs. "My water just broke." The NICU lights hummed with mechanical persistence. Sarah stared through the plastic incubator at her son, born 6 weeks early, weighing 4 pounds and 2 ounces. He was perfect and terrifying, hooked to monitors that beeped with his tiny heartbeat. Marcus paced behind her, on his phone. Always on his phone. He'd driven her to the hospital, played the concerned husband for the doctors, but she'd seen him texting throughout her labor. Probably Victoria. "He's stable," said Dr. Rodriguez, a kind woman with gentle hands. "His lungs need support, but he's a fighter. Few weeks in NICU, and he'll be ready to go home." Home. Where was that now? Marcus ended his call. "Sarah, we need to talk. Our son is fighting to breathe, and you want to talk? Keep your voice down." He glanced around the NICU, though they were alone except for 2 nurses at the far end. "Listen, what happened earlier, before your water broke, I'm sorry, I handled it badly." For a moment, hope flickered. "You mean—" "I mean the way I told you. I should have been more delicate. But Sarah, we both know this hasn't been working. We want different things. You're happy with your small life, and that's fine. But I need a partner who understands ambition." "Ambition," she repeated numbly. "Victoria gets it. Her father is opening doors for me you can't imagine. The Sterling Tech IPO was just the beginning." He pulled out an envelope from his jacket. "I had my lawyer draw these up last week. Sign them and we can do this cleanly. I'll give you the house in Berkeley, $50,000, and monthly support for the baby." "Last week? You had divorce papers drawn up last week?" "Don't be dramatic. It's generous considering California's community property laws. My lawyer says you could fight for half of Sterling Tech, but we both know you won't. You hate conflict." She was still processing this when 2 security guards appeared at the NICU entrance. "Ma'am," one said, not unkindly, "we need you to come with us." "What? No, my baby?" "There's been a report of erratic behavior. For the safety of the infant, I haven't done anything." She looked at Marcus, saw the truth in his carefully blank expression. "You called security on me?" "You've been through trauma," Marcus said smoothly. "Water breaking from stress, premature birth." "Dr. Rodriguez, doesn't postpartum psychosis sometimes present immediately?" The doctor frowned. "That's extremely rare, and Mrs. Sterling shows no signs. She was hysterical earlier, throwing things, screaming." The lies fell from his lips like water. "I'm concerned for our son's safety." "That's not true." Sarah's voice rose, and she saw the security guards tense. Saw how it looked. Desperate woman shouting in NICU while calm, concerned husband speaks reasonably with doctors. Please, ma'am, just come with us. You can sort this out with the administration. I'm not leaving my baby. But they were already moving, professionally gentle but firm. As they escorted her out, she heard Marcus say to Dr. Rodriguez, I'll be filing for emergency custody. For the baby's safety, you understand. The last thing she saw was her son, tiny and alone in his plastic world, machines breathing for him, while his father signed papers that would steal him away. They put her in a small room in the administrative wing. Hospital security took her statement while Marcus's lawyer, a shark named Barrett, presented a judge's emergency order via video call. Temporary custody to Marcus pending psychological evaluation. She couldn't return to the NICU without supervision and Marcus's permission. This is insane, she kept saying. I haven't done anything wrong. The video suggests otherwise, Barrett said smoothly. What video? He produced a tablet, security footage from their garage, timestamped from that morning. It showed her throwing things, screaming, clearly unstable. Except she'd been at the art center that morning. But the woman in the grainy footage wore her clothes, had her hair. That's not me. Mrs. Sterling, or should I say Miss Mitchell, since that's the name you've been using fraudulently, your husband is being very generous. Sign the papers. Take the $50,000. Don't make this uglier than necessary. That's when she understood. This wasn't a reaction to her discovering the affair. This was planned, orchestrated. The affair with Victoria, the divorce papers prepared in advance, the fake video. Marcus had been setting this up for weeks, maybe months. I want a lawyer. Of course, though, I should mention that Mr. Sterling has already frozen the joint accounts for asset protection. And your personal account has, what, $300? Good luck finding representation. The Berkeley house felt like a crime scene. Everything exactly as she'd left it that morning. But somehow violated, wrong. Marcus had cleared out his things while she was at the hospital. His closet empty, his office stripped of computers and files. But he'd left her things untouched, a museum of their fake life together. Sarah sat on their bed, her bed now, and called the only person she could think of. Diane, it's Sarah. Oh my God, honey, I saw on Facebook. Marcus posted that you had the baby early. How is he? How are you? Diane Collins had been her roommate at art school before Sarah dropped out to avoid her father's investigators finding her. They'd stayed close, meeting for coffee monthly, sharing dreams and disappointments. Diane, I need help. Marcus and I, we're getting divorced. He's taken the baby. I need a lawyer, but say no more. I'm coming over. 20 minutes. Diane arrived with Thai food and wine, then remembered Sarah was supposed to be breastfeeding and apologized profusely. She listened to the whole story, held Sarah while she sobbed, then made a call. My cousin Janet is a family lawyer. She'll help. Pro bono if needed. For the first time in 48 hours, Sarah felt hope. Janet Brooks was everything Barrett wasn't. Warm, fierce, and genuinely outraged by Marcus's behavior. She filed counters to every motion, demanded the security footage be authenticated, got Sarah supervised visitation starting immediately. The fake video won't hold up under scrutiny, Janet assured her. We'll get your son back. The first visitation was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Sarah arrived at the hospital early, waited in the designated family room. Marcus came in carrying their son, now breathing on his own, gaining weight. She reached for him, and Marcus actually smiled as he transferred the baby. Hey, little one, she whispered, tears streaming. Mama's here. The baby, who she'd decided to call Owen regardless of Marcus's preferences, opened his eyes. They were her eyes, gray-green like winter seas. He made a small sound, almost like recognition. That's when his breathing changed. What's wrong? Sarah looked at the monitor's arm, saw his oxygen dropping. Marcus, get the nurse! But Marcus just stood there, watching with an odd expression as Owen's lips began turning blue. Get help! She hit the emergency button, cradling Owen as nurses rushed in. They took him, working with swift efficiency, and within minutes he was stable again. But Sarah saw the looks they exchanged, saw Marcus whispering to one of them. What did you do to him? Marcus asked loudly, for the benefit of the recording visitation. Did you give him something? Try to hurt him so I couldn't have him? What? No. But the damage was done. The incident was recorded as infant distress during maternal contact. Janet fought it, but the judge, an old golf buddy of Robert Ashford's, suspended a visitation pending investigation. That night, broken and desperate, Sarah finally called the number she'd hidden in her phone under pizza delivery. Morrison answered on the second ring. "Miss Hamilton, your father has been expecting your call." The phone felt like lead in Sarah's hand as she stood in her empty kitchen, Morrison's words echoing in her mind. Her father was dying. Jack Hamilton, the man who had built a pharmaceutical empire from nothing, who had crushed competitors and commanded boardrooms with an iron fist, was being eaten alive by his own cells. The irony wasn't lost on her. All those billions in drug development, and he couldn't buy his way out of pancreatic cancer. "I need time to think," she told Morrison. "My envy is the one commodity that cannot be purchased, Miss Hamilton. Your father has perhaps 8 weeks, less if the latest scans are accurate." Sarah ended the call and sank onto a kitchen stool. The house felt cavernous around her, every room echoing with memories of a life that had turned out to be built on quicksand. She could still smell Marcus's cologne in the hallway, that expensive Tom Ford scent he'd started wearing after the IPO. When had he stopped wearing the simple aftershave she used to buy him for Christmas? Her laptop sat open on the counter, displaying her dwindling bank account. $347. That's what remained of Sarah Mitchell, art teacher. Marcus had been thorough in his cruelty, moving their savings the very day she'd discovered the affair. She'd been too shocked, too focused on Owen's premature birth to even notice until the declined card at the hospital parking garage. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden. Sarah's heart lurched. She wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, she saw Morrison standing on her porch, looking exactly as he had when she was a child. Same charcoal suit, same patient expression, same leather briefcase that probably cost more than her car. "I said I needed time," she said through the door. "Forgive the intrusion, but there are developments you need to know about immediately. May I come in?" She let him in, noting how he cataloged everything: the bare walls where wedding photos once hung, the packed boxes in the corner, the general air of abandonment that permeated the space. "Marcus Sterling returned here this morning," Morrison said without preamble. "Security footage shows him removing several items from the garage, including your external hard drive." "My backup drive? Why would he—" Sarah stopped, realization dawning. "The photos. I had photos from the Carmel house stored there." Morrison's expression remained neutral. "The Prescott estate in Carmel, yes. Photos that would clearly identify you as Sarah Hamilton, not Sarah Mitchell. But he doesn't know about that. He's never seen those photos." "Are you certain?" "Men like Marcus Sterling don't achieve what he has without being thorough. He may have suspected something was off about your background. A safety deposit box with no key questions asked, perhaps. Insurance against future need." Sarah felt sick. If Marcus had those photos, if he put the pieces together, he could expose me, or use the information as leverage. However, that's not why I'm here. Morrison opened his briefcase, pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. "Your father had Sterling Tech investigated the moment their IPO was announced. He likes to know all the players in the pharmaceutical space, even peripheral ones. What he found was interesting." Sarah took the folder, flipped it open. Financial records, email threads, photographs. Her hands stilled on a picture dated 8 months ago. Marcus at a conference in Boston, sitting at a bar with Victoria Ashford. Their body language was professional, but Victoria's hand rested on Marcus's arm, and he was leaning in to hear her over the noise. 8 months ago," Sarah said quietly. "We were trying to get pregnant 8 months ago." "Keep reading." The next document was a memo from Robert Ashford to his executive team. The subject line: Sterling Tech Acquisition Strategy. "The CEO is young, ambitious, and married to a woman of no particular standing or connection. Victoria has agreed to assist in creating favorable conditions for negotiation. Timeline: 6 to 12 months. Sarah's hands shook. They targeted him. This whole thing was planned. More than that, look at the date on that memo. She checked. The memo was dated 10 months ago, just 2 weeks after Sterling Tech had announced their breakthrough in biotech sensors. The technology that had made Marcus a millionaire overnight had also painted a target on his back. "But how did they know about me? about my lack of connections. Morrison pulled out another document, this one a private investigator's report. They had you investigated, of course. Sarah Mitchell, art teacher, no family money, no powerful connections. Small-town Kansas background. Parents deceased. No siblings. The perfect nobody. Sarah laughed, bitter and short. They investigated my fake identity and found exactly what I wanted them to find. Nothing. The irony is rather poetic. However, there's more. Morrison pulled out a medical record. Victoria Ashford visited a fertility clinic 6 months ago, not for herself, but to research options. She was planning a pregnancy trap from the beginning. The baby Marcus thinks is indeed biologically not his. She used a sperm donor, selected for optimal genetics and appearance that could plausibly pass for Marcus's child until a DNA test revealed otherwise. By then, she assumed they would be married and the legal complications would keep Marcus entangled long enough for her father to complete the hostile takeover. Sarah stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Outside, her neighbor was gardening, living a blissfully normal life. Why are you telling me this? Why does my father care? Because Robert Ashford made a mistake. He targeted Sterling Tech not just for its value, but because he discovered something. A single photo from a charity gala 3 years ago. You're in the background, talking to a donor. The photo is grainy, but facial recognition is quite advanced these days. Morrison produced the photo. Sarah saw herself dressed in a simple black dress, speaking with an elderly woman at a Hamilton Pharmaceuticals charity event. She'd snuck in to see her mother's memorial dedication, staying only 20 minutes before fleeing. Robert recognized you? His security team did. They flagged the anomaly. Why would Jack Hamilton's missing daughter be married to a tech CEO and living under an assumed name? Robert saw opportunity. If he could destroy your marriage and expose your identity simultaneously, it would be a personal blow to your father while also securing Sterling Tech. The full scope of the manipulation hit Sarah like a physical blow. She wasn't collateral damage. She was a specifically targeted missile aimed at her father's heart. My father knew all this and did nothing? What could he do? Expose your identity himself? Warn Marcus and reveal he'd been having you watched? Your father has many skills, but delicate emotional situations have never been among them. Morrison's voice softened slightly. He also believed, perhaps foolishly, that your marriage was strong enough for you to weather the storm. He underestimated both Marcus's weakness and Victoria's ruthlessness. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, but the image attached made her blood run cold. It was a photo of Owen in the NICU, taken from outside the window. The message read, "Beautiful baby, shame about the custody situation. Perhaps we should talk." R.A. Robert Ashford was photographing her son. "He's threatening Owen," she said, showing Morrison the message. Morrison's expression darkened. Mr. Ashford has overplayed his hand. Threatening a Hamilton heir, even one who doesn't use the name, is declaration of war. He pulled out his phone, typed rapidly. "I'm activating our security team. Owen will have 24-hour protection. Discreet, but thorough. I can't afford. You're Jack Hamilton's daughter. You could buy Sterling Tech yourself if you chose to access your trust fund. I don't want that money. What you want and what your son needs may be two different things." Morrison stood. "Your father isn't asking you to forgive him or to take over Hamilton Pharmaceuticals. He's asking for the chance to help protect his grandson. Will you at least consider meeting with him?" Sarah looked at the photo of Owen on her phone, so small and vulnerable. She'd run from the Hamilton name to protect herself from becoming like her father. But now she had someone else to protect. "Not at the estate," she said finally. "Neutral ground. The St. Francis Hotel, penthouse suite. Tomorrow at noon. I'll make the arrangements." After Morrison left, Sarah sat in the gathering darkness, processing everything. The affair wasn't just betrayal, it was corporate espionage. The custody battle wasn't just cruel, it was a chess move in a larger game. And she wasn't just a discarded wife. She was a weapon being used against her own father. Her phone rang. Janet Brooks, her lawyer. "Sarah, I've been digging into the NICU incident. The nurse who was closest to Marcus during Owen's distress? Her name is Patricia Morse. She just paid off her student loans in full. $80,000, cash deposit. Can we prove Marcus paid her? Not directly, but Patricia's sister works for Ashford Industries. The connection is there, just as not actionable. Yet. Sarah thought about the recording on Marcus's iPad, the one where Robert Ashford discussed the disposability of Marcus's current wife. I might have something that could help. Can we meet tonight? Of course, Sarah, there's something else. The judge assigned to your case, Harold Brennan, he's up for federal appointment next year. Guess who's been lobbying for him? Robert Ashford. The web is extensive. We're not just fighting Marcus. We're fighting a system designed to crush you. Sarah ended the call and pulled up her laptop. She had run from the Hamilton name for 5 years, but maybe it was time to stop running. She opened a new email addressing it to Morrison. Schedule the meeting, but I have conditions. She typed out her terms. She would meet her father. She would listen, but she would not be returning to the family fold as some prodigal daughter. If Jack Hamilton wanted to help, it would be on her terms, for Owen's sake, not for the Hamilton legacy. As she hit send, another text arrived from the unknown number. This time it was a video. Victoria Ashford, sitting in what looked like a private club, speaking to someone off camera. She's pathetic, really. Thinks she's some kind of artist, changing the world one finger painting at a time. Marcus says she actually believes her little community art center matters. Once we have full custody of the baby, we'll make sure he's raised properly. Elite schools, the right connections, not some public school garbage with the unwashed masses. The video was clearly taken without Victoria's knowledge. Who had sent it, and why? A third text arrived. The enemy of your enemy, tomorrow after your meeting, Union Square, Northeast Corner, 2 p.m. Come alone. Sarah stared at the message, then deleted the entire thread. Someone else was playing this game. Someone with their own agenda. The question was whether they were an ally or just another predator circling her disaster. She walked to Owen's nursery, the room Marcus had painted pale blue while discussing baby names. The teddy bear he'd bought sat in the corner, innocent looking. But now she knew it contained planted drugs, evidence that could destroy her completely if discovered. She picked up the bear, felt along its seams until she found the small slit. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a small bag of white powder, enough to destroy her life and any chance of custody, painted her as an unfit mother, and added, Sarah took photos of everything, the bear, the drugs, the placement. Then she carefully resealed it all, putting the bear back exactly where it had been. If Victoria thought she had this leverage, let her think it. Sarah was learning that in this game, what your enemy believed was often more powerful than what was true. She went to her closet, to the back where she kept a single garment bag she'd never opened in 5 years. Inside was a dress her mother had bought her for her 18th birthday, a week before she died. It was elegant, expensive, the kind of thing Sarah Hamilton would wear, not Sarah Mitchell. Tomorrow she would meet her father. Tomorrow she would decide whether to remain the nobody Marcus had discarded or become the somebody she'd been born to be. But tonight she was just a mother, missing her son, surrounded by enemies, with nothing but her wits and a legacy she'd never wanted. The Hamilton curse, her mother had called it. All that money, all that power, and no one to trust. Sarah was beginning to understand exactly what she'd meant. The St. Francis Hotel penthouse suite commanded a view of Union Square that normally would have taken Sarah's breath away. Today, she barely noticed it. She stood in front of the full-length mirror in the dressing room Morrison had arranged, staring at a stranger. The woman looking back wore a Saint Laurent dress that had appeared in the suite that morning, perfectly sized, accompanied by shoes, jewelry, and a note. Your mother's choices for your 25th birthday. She never got to give them to you. Sarah touched the pearl necklace at her throat. Her mother had died when Sarah was 17, a sudden stroke that Jack Hamilton had handled like a business crisis. Efficient, controlled, emotionless. Sarah had found him in his office that night, reviewing acquisition papers while his wife's body was still warm. A knock at the door interrupted her memories. He's here, Morrison announced. Jack Hamilton entered the suite slowly, each step measured, conserving energy. The man who had once commanded rooms with his presence now looked fragile, mortal. His suit, while impeccable, hung loose on his diminished frame. But his eyes, those gray-green eyes Sarah had inherited, remained sharp as surgical instruments. Sarah. Just her name, but waited with 5 years of silence. Jack. She couldn't call him Dad. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He smiled slightly. Fair enough. He moved to the seating area, lowering himself carefully into a chair. You look like her. Your mother. Especially in that dress. Morrison said you have been having me watched. Not watched. Protected. There's a difference. Semantics. You knew where I was, what I was doing, who I was with. I knew you were safe. That was all I needed. He pulled out a tablet, fingers shaking slightly as he navigated to a folder. Would you like to see what I knew? Despite herself, Sarah moved closer. The folder contained reports, but not what she'd expected. No photos, no detailed surveillance, just brief updates. Subject healthy. Subject employed, Oakland Community Center. Subject married, appears happy. Subject pregnant. That's all? I didn't need more. You weren't ready to come home. Forcing it would have driven you away forever. He looked up at her. I learned that lesson too late with your mother. Mom wanted to leave you? She tried. When you were 15, I convinced her to stay, promised to change. I didn't. Couldn't. The work was all I knew how to love. He closed the tablet. When she died, I realized I'd lost her years before. When you ran, I promised myself I wouldn't make the same mistake. I'd let you go, let you live, but I'd make sure you were safe. And now? Now my grandson is being used as a pawn in Robert Ashford's game, and my daughter is being destroyed by men who think her worthless because they don't know her value. His voice hardened, a glimpse of the old Jack Hamilton. That I cannot allow. Morrison appeared with a tea service, giving Sarah a moment to process. Her father was offering help but not control, protection but not possession. What do you propose? She asked finally. Jack pulled out a folder, hand sliding it across the glass coffee table. First, we'd destroy them legally. My team has compiled everything, the fraud, the conspiracy, the attempted harm to Owen. FBI agent Diana Walsh is expecting your call. She's completely clean, no connections to Ashford. Sarah opened the folder, scanning the contents. It was thorough, devastating. This is enough to bury them. It's a start, but legal victories take time. Owen needs his mother now. Jack produced a second folder. Victoria Ashford's medical records from her IVF procedure. The actual donor profile. She selected someone who could never be mistaken for Marcus. Nordic features, blue eyes, blonde hair. She wanted the baby to be obviously not his, eventually. Maximum humiliation. Why would she do that? Because she doesn't actually want Marcus long-term. She wants the company, the patents, then a quick divorce where she keeps everything because he'll be too destroyed to fight. It's happened before. 3 years ago in Boston, a biotech CEO named David Walker. Same pattern, affair, pregnancy, revelation that the child wasn't his. Complete destruction of the man while Victoria walked away with half his assets. Sarah felt sick. She's done this before? Twice. The first time was in London, 6 years ago. Tech entrepreneur Nathan James Whitley. He killed himself 8 months after the divorce. The room felt suddenly cold. Sarah thought of Marcus, weak and vain, but not evil. We have to warn him. Jack raised an eyebrow. The man who threw you out while pregnant? The father of my child, whatever he's become, Owen deserves a father who's alive and functional. You're more generous than I would be. I'm more generous than you, period. Jack actually smiled at that. Your mother again. She always said mercy was a luxury only the powerful could truly afford. He gestured to Morrison, who produced a phone. Agent Walsh is waiting for your call. The conversation with the FBI agent was brief but productive. Walsh would meet with Sarah that afternoon, after her father meeting. They would plan the operation. Victoria would be approached wearing a wire, prompted to confess. It was dangerous, but necessary. I'll provide backup, Jack said after Sarah ended the call. Discreet but thorough. You won't see them, but they'll be there. I don't want bodyguards. They're not for you. They're for Owen. The moment you reveal yourself as a Hamilton, you become a target. More importantly, he does. Kidnapping, exploitation, worse. The Hamilton curse isn't just the money, Sarah. It's what people will do to get it. Sarah thought of Owen in the NICU, so vulnerable. Fine, but discreet means discreet. I don't want men in black following me, obviously. Agreed. Jack stood carefully. There's one more thing. Your trust fund. I don't want it. It's not about wanting. It's about power. Right now, Marcus and the Ashfords think you're helpless because you're broke. The moment you access those funds, everything changes. You go from victim to player, from nobody to somebody. I ran from being somebody. No, Jack said quietly. You ran from being me. But you're not me, Sarah. You never were. You're like your mother, strong enough to have power without being corrupted by it. The art center, those children you teach, the life you built, that's not someone running from power. That's someone who understands that real power isn't about money. It's about impact. He moved toward the door, then paused. The trust fund is yours regardless. $50 million, accessible immediately. Another $200 million when I die, which will be soon. The rest goes to Hamilton Pharmaceuticals and the foundation. Use it, don't use it. But remember, Owen didn't choose to be born into this. The least we can do is make sure he's protected from it. After Jack left, Sarah sat in the silence of the penthouse, processing everything. Her phone buzzed with the reminder. Union Square, 2 p.m. The mysterious messenger. She looked at herself in the mirror again. The designer dress, the pearls, the careful makeup Morrison had arranged to have done. She looked like Sarah Hamilton. But underneath, she was still the woman who'd taught Jaden to paint sunsets, who'd loved Marcus despite his flaws, who'd built a small, meaningful life. Maybe she didn't have to choose. Maybe she could be both. The FBI field office was a stark contrast to the hotel's luxury. Agent Diana Walsh was everything Jack had promised. Sharp, direct, completely professional. She reviewed Sarah's evidence with the intensity of someone who took personal offense at crimes against children. The recording from the iPad is good, but we need Victoria on tape personally. She's been careful, always having others do the dirty work. But she's also arrogant. That's our advantage. How do you want to play it? You'll meet her in public, somewhere she feels safe, confront her with the IVF records, make her think you're desperate, willing to deal. She'll confess because she'll think she's won. People like Victoria Ashford always need to gloat. Walsh produced a small device, no bigger than a button. State-of-the-art, undetectable, clear audio even in crowds. We'll have agents positioned nearby, but not obviously. If anything goes wrong, say the word custody 3 times in a row. We'll move in. Sarah took the device, its weight negligible, but its implications heavy. When? Tomorrow if possible. The longer we wait, the more time they have to solidify their position. Sarah thought about the mysterious meeting at Union Square. Can you have people there today? 2 p.m., Northeast Corner? I'm meeting someone who claims to have information. Walsh frowned. That's in 30 minutes. I can have undercover units there, but Sarah, this could be a trap. Everything could be a trap at this point, but someone sent me a video of Victoria talking about Owen. Someone with access to her private moments. That's worth the risk. Union Square buzzed with typical afternoon energy, tourists, shoppers, street performers. Sarah stood at the northeast corner, trying to look casual while her nerves screamed danger. She'd changed from the designer dress into something more her, jeans, a soft sweater, boots. Sarah Mitchell clothes, not Sarah Hamilton armor. Don't turn around. The voice came from directly behind her. Female, young, nervous. Who are you? Sarah asked the air. Someone who knows what it's like to be Victoria Ashford's victim. David Walker was my brother. Sarah's breath caught. The Boston CEO who'd been Victoria's previous target. She destroyed him, the woman continued. Not just financially. She broke something in him. He couldn't trust anyone after her, couldn't believe in love or kindness. He killed himself, thinking the world was nothing but users and predators. I'm sorry. I don't want your pity. I want her stopped. I've been following her, documenting her patterns. I have recordings, photos, evidence of her other victims. Things the FBI doesn't know about. Why not go to them directly? Because I'm nobody. David's little sister, a graphic designer from Southie, but you're somebody, even if you've been hiding it. Sarah Hamilton has the power to make them listen. Sarah tensed. How do you know that name? I'm good at research. Very good. Good enough to know that Jack Hamilton's daughter disappeared 5 years ago and Sarah Mitchell appeared in California with no real history around the same time. Good enough to know that Marcus Sterling just threw away a fortune he can't even imagine. What do you want? Justice for David, prison for Victoria, and for you to stop hiding. The Sarah Mitchell Act? It's selfish. You have the power to help people to change things, and you're playing teacher in Oakland, pretending you're nobody special. The words stung because they echoed her father's. There's a flash drive taped under the bench to your left, the woman continued. Everything I have on Victoria. Use it. And when you destroy her, remember David Walker. Remember that some of us don't get to run away from our pain because we don't have trust funds to run to. Sarah heard footsteps walking away. She waited 5 minutes, then casually sat on the bench, feeling underneath until she found the drive. Around her, she spotted at least 2 of Walsh's undercover agents, trying too hard to look casual. Her phone rang. Marcus. We need to talk, he said without preamble. I know who you are. Sarah's blood chilled. What do you mean? Cut the act. I found the photos. The Prescott estate in Carmel, you standing in front of the Hamilton family portrait. You're Jack Hamilton's daughter. You're worth billions. And you let me think you were nobody. You threw me out for being nobody. I threw you out because... He stopped and she heard him take a breath. Meet me tomorrow, noon, the house. We need to discuss Owen's future, and I'd rather do it without lawyers. Is Victoria there? Victoria and I are taking a break. This is between us. The parents of that baby you're keeping from me. Sarah wanted to scream that she wasn't keeping Owen from him, that he'd orchestrated the whole separation. But something in his voice stopped her. He sounded different, desperate, afraid. Fine, noon, but I'm bringing my lawyer. Bring whoever you want. Just come. She ended the call, immediately texting Walsh about the meeting. This could be their chance to get Victoria on recording, if they played it right. That evening, Sarah sat in her empty house, the flash drive's contents spread across her laptop screen. David Walker's sister, Anna, according to the files, had been thorough. Photos of Victoria with various men over the years, medical records from multiple IVF clinics, financial documents showing patterns of targeting, seduction, and destruction. One file made Sarah's hands shake. It was a suicide note, David Walker's final words. She made me believe I was special, then showed me I was nothing. She carried my child, then told me it was never mine. She loved me, then revealed it was all a lie. I don't know what's real anymore. I can't live in a world where everything might be a performance. Tell Anna I'm sorry. Tell her it's not her fault, it's mine, for believing I deserved love. Sarah closed the laptop, went to the window. Somewhere in the city, Owen was in the NICU, fighting to breathe, to grow, to live. His father was weak and vain, but still his father. His mother was a hidden heiress, playing at being normal. His whole existence was built on lies and betrayals. But he was also innocent, perfect, deserving of better than all of them. She pulled out her phone, accessed a number she'd memorized but never called. Her trust fund access code, $50 million, was only waiting for 5 years. Before she could change her mind, she initiated the transfer. Not all of it, she wasn't ready for that. But $5 million moved to a new account under Sarah Hamilton's name. Enough to fight, enough to win, enough to protect Owen from everyone who would use him. The banking app confirmed the transfer with quiet efficiency. Just like that, Sarah Mitchell began to fade, and Sarah Hamilton started to emerge. Tomorrow she would face Marcus knowing he knew the truth. She would wear the wire, get Victoria's confession, and hand the woman over to the FBI. She would stop hiding, stop running, stop pretending to be nobody. Because Anna Reynolds was right. It was selfish to have power and not use it. David Walker was dead because he'd had no one powerful enough to protect him from Victoria. How many others were out there, destroyed by people like the Ashfords because nobody with real power would stand up for them? Sarah looked at her reflection in the dark window. She didn't look like Sarah Mitchell anymore. She didn't quite look like Sarah Hamilton either. She looked like something new, something forged in betrayal and tempered by motherhood. She looked like someone who was done being anybody's victim. The Berkeley house felt like a crime scene she was revisiting. Sarah stood on the porch at exactly noon, Janet Brooks beside her, the FBI wire taped securely under her blouse. Agent Walsh's team was positioned around the neighborhood, a jogger who'd been stretching for 10 minutes, a utility worker who seemed very interested in a perfectly functional power line, a couple having an extended argument in a parked car. "Remember," Janet whispered, "anything he says could be admissible. Don't let him bait you into saying something that could hurt the custody case." Sarah nodded, then rang her own doorbell. The absurdity of it would have been funny if the stakes weren't so high. Marcus opened the door immediately, as if he'd been standing right behind it. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt she recognized from their honeymoon in Hawaii. For a moment, she saw the man she'd married, the one who'd spent hours teaching kids to code for free, who'd cried at their wedding when she walked down the aisle. "You came," he said, voice rough. "You knew I would. Owen is all that matters." He stepped aside and she entered what had been her home for 3 years. The living room was chaos, papers everywhere, empty takeout containers, 3 laptops running simultaneously. It looked like he'd been living in this one room. "Victoria's gone," he said abruptly. "Took her things this morning. Said I was too much of a mess to be useful anymore." Sarah kept her expression neutral, though inside she was calculating. Had Victoria sensed the walls closing in? "I'm sorry," she said, meaning it despite everything. Marcus laughed, bitter and sharp. "No, you're not, and you shouldn't be. She played me like a violin, and I danced to every note." He collapsed onto the couch, head in his hands. "Jack Hamilton's daughter. Jesus Christ, Sarah, or should I call you Alara?" "Sarah is fine. It's who I've been for 5 years. But not who you are." He looked up at her, and she saw real pain there. "Do you know what it's like to realize your entire life is built on a lie? That the person you thought you knew never existed?" The irony of him saying this to her, after what he'd done, should have made her angry. Instead, she felt only sad. "Yes, Marcus, I know exactly what that's like." He flinched. "Fair. God, so fair." He stood pacing to the window. "They approached me 8 months ago. Did you know that? Before you were even pregnant. Robert Ashford himself at a conference in Boston. Said he saw potential in Sterling Tech. Wanted to help me reach the next level. Introduced me to Victoria as his protege, someone who could teach me about real power. And you fell for it." "Fell. I fell for her." The admission seemed to break something in him. "She was everything I thought I wanted, confident, connected, from the world I was desperate to enter. She made me feel like I belonged, like I was more than some working-class kid from Detroit playing at being a tech mogul." Sarah thought of the wire, of Agent Walsh listening. "Tell me about the plan, all of it." Marcus turned to face her, and she thought he was crying. Marcus, who she'd never seen shed a tear except at their wedding, was crying. "They wanted Sterling Tech, but more than that, they wanted to hurt your father. Robert knew who you were, had some facial recognition hit from a charity thing. He thought it was perfect. Destroy Jack Hamilton's daughter's marriage, take the company, send a message that even the Hamiltons could be touched. And Owen? Owen wasn't supposed to happen. You getting pregnant complicated things." Victoria was furious, said it would make the divorce messier, the custody battle harder. That's when she decided to get pregnant too, to level the playing field. "Except she didn't get pregnant with your child." Marcus froze. "What?" Sarah pulled out the IVF records Anna Reynolds had provided. She used a sperm donor, Scandinavian, blue eyes, blonde hair. "The baby she's carrying could never be yours, Marcus." She watched him process this, saw the last of his illusions shatter. He sank back onto the couch, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. "Everything was a lie," he whispered. "Every kiss, every promise, every—" He stopped, looking at her with desperate eyes. "Was we a lie too? Us? Or was that real?" "It was real for me," Sarah said quietly. "I loved you, Marcus. Not your ambition, not your potential. You, the guy who taught free coding classes and got excited about Star Trek reruns and made terrible pancakes every Sunday. But I wasn't enough. That guy wasn't enough. He was for me, but he wasn't enough for you." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, then the NICU incident with Owen. I need you to know, I didn't mean for that to happen. Victoria had this nurse, Patricia. She was supposed to just make you look unstable, hold him wrong or something minor. But he actually couldn't breathe, and his voice broke. I froze. I watched our son almost die, and I froze because I was afraid of ruining the plan. Sarah's hands clenched. On the wire, this was gold for the FBI. But as a mother, she wanted to destroy him. You let our baby suffer for a plan? I'm sorry, God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I've become someone I don't recognize. Someone who would hurt a baby, my baby, for money and status. He stood abruptly, walked to his laptop. I'm sending you everything. Every email with Robert, every text with Victoria, recordings I made of their conversations when I started getting suspicious. It's all here. Because Owen deserves better than what I've become. And because maybe if I help you stop them, I can start becoming someone worthy of being his father again. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Walsh. We have enough. Get out safely. But something made her stay. Marcus, they're going to arrest Victoria, probably Robert too. You'll be charged as well. But if you cooperate, I know, I figured it out when you walked in with that particular expression. You're wearing a wire, aren't you? Sarah tensed. It's okay, Marcus said. I want them to hear this. I, Marcus Sterling, am a fool who sold his soul for a seat at a table that was never going to accept me. I betrayed the only real thing in my life for an illusion. I participated in a conspiracy to commit fraud, to manipulate custody proceedings, to harm my own child. I deserve whatever's coming. He walked closer to her, stopping just out of reach. But Sarah, Alara, whoever you are, please, don't let Owen grow up like I did, always feeling less than, always desperate to prove himself. Tell him his father loved him, but wasn't strong enough to show it the right way. Tell him to be better than me. Before Sarah could respond, the front door exploded open. Victoria stood there, wild-eyed and furious. You idiot, she screamed at Marcus. You're confessing? To her? She saw Sarah and her expression turned venomous. And you, little Miss Nobody turned Princess Hamilton. You think you've won? Victoria Ashford, Agent Walsh appeared behind her. You're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and endangerment of a child. Victoria laughed, high and manic. You can't arrest me. Do you know who my father is? Do you know? Your father was arrested 20 minutes ago, Walsh said calmly. Federal agents are currently seizing all Ashford Industries assets pending investigation. The color drained from Victoria's face. No, that's impossible. We had judges, senators, all of whom are distancing themselves as we speak. Walsh nodded to her team, who moved in with handcuffs. The Hamilton name still carries weight, Ms. Ashford. More than yours ever did. As they cuffed Victoria, she locked eyes with Sarah. This isn't over. I'll get out, and when you do, you'll find I'm not hiding anymore, Sarah said quietly. I'm not Sarah Mitchell, the nobody you could manipulate. I'm Sarah Hamilton, and I protect what's mine. They led Victoria away, her threats echoing down the driveway. Marcus stood frozen, waiting. Mr. Sterling, Walsh said, not unkindly, you'll need to come with us as well. Your cooperation will be noted. Marcus nodded, then looked at Sarah one last time. The house is yours. Everything is yours. The passwords are in the desk drawer. Tell Owen. He stopped, swallowed. Just tell him I'm sorry. As they led Marcus away, Sarah stood alone in the wreckage of her former life. The house felt different now, not like a crime scene, but like a battlefield after the war. She'd won, but victory tasted like ash. Her phone rang. Morrison. Your father is watching the news. He wanted me to tell you he's proud. How is he? Tired but satisfied. The Ashfords have been a thorn in his side for decades. Seeing them fall, knowing you're the one who toppled them, it's given him peace. It doesn't feel peaceful. Victory rarely does. Your mother used to say that winning meant someone else lost, and loss always leaves scars, even on the winners. Sarah walked through the house, seeing it with new eyes. The nursery Marcus had painted, the kitchen where they'd cooked together, the bedroom where they'd dreamed of a future. All of it tainted now, but also still hers. Morrison, I want to set up a foundation. For women like me, like Anna Reynolds' brother, like everyone the Ashfords destroyed, I want to help them rebuild. Your trust fund is yours to use as you see fit. Not just mine. I want Dad to contribute. Hamilton Pharmaceuticals should contribute. We have a responsibility to help people, not just make money off their illnesses. Morrison chuckled. You sound like your mother. She always said the Hamilton fortune came with Hamilton obligations. Sarah found herself in Owen's nursery, looking at the teddy bear that still contained the planted drugs. She picked it up, considered it. Morrison, I'm going to need the best family law attorney in the country. I want Owen back, and I want to make sure Marcus gets the help he needs. Prison, yes, but also therapy, real help. He's sick, Morrison, sick with ambition and insecurity and all the things that make people do terrible things. You're defending him? I'm understanding him. There's a difference. She put the bear down. We're all products of our damage. Marcus's damage made him weak. Mine made me run. Dad's made him cold. But Owen doesn't have to inherit our damage. He can be better. Your father would like to see you and Owen when he's released from the NICU. Tell him tomorrow after I get my son back. That evening, Sarah sat in the NICU, holding Owen for the first time without supervision. He was stronger now, breathing on his own, gaining weight. His eyes, her eyes, Jack Hamilton's eyes, studied her with infant intensity. Your daddy made bad choices, she whispered to him, and Mommy hid from good ones. But we're going to do better now, both of us. Dr. Rodriguez appeared, smiling. He's ready to go home tomorrow. Full recovery, no lasting effects. He's a fighter. He's a Hamilton, Sarah said, then corrected herself. No, he's himself, Owen Sterling Hamilton, his own person, not defined by either legacy. As she held her son, Sarah's phone buzzed with news alerts. Billionaire Heiress exposes tech conspiracy. Hamilton daughter returns. Ashford empire crumbles. She turned off the phone. Tomorrow she would deal with the media, the lawyers, the foundation, her father, Marcus's sentencing, Victoria's trial. Tomorrow she would be Sarah Hamilton, billionaire philanthropist. But tonight she was just a mother, holding her baby, in a quiet NICU room, finally at peace with all the versions of herself. The war was over. The rebuilding could begin, and this time she would build something true. 3 days later, the story broke nationally. Billionaire Heiress exposes tech conspiracy, what ran in the Wall Street Journal. Hidden Hamilton heir brings down Ashford empire, screamed the New York Post. Sarah ignored them all, focused on Owen, who was finally strong enough to leave the NICU. But on day 4, Diane arrived at the hospital with coffee and a strange expression. We need to talk, Diane said. Sarah's stomach dropped. After everything, she recognized that tone. You're involved somehow. Diane nodded, tears already forming. Victoria paid me $50,000 to get close to you again, to record our conversations. I'm in debt from my mom's cancer treatment, and she broke down completely. I'm so sorry. Sarah felt hollow. What did you tell her? Everything. Your favorite places, your routines, your passwords. She used it all. The deepfake video was based on footage I took of you. But Sarah, I swear I didn't know about the baby. When I found out their plan for Owen, I tried to back out, but Victoria threatened me. With what? She has video of me planting evidence in your house. Drugs. She was going to use it if you didn't give up custody completely. Make you look like an addict. The betrayal cut deeper than Marcus's. Diane had been her friend before any of this, her genuine connection to a normal life. Where's the evidence now? Still hidden in Owen's nursery, inside the teddy bear Marcus bought. Sarah called Agent Walsh immediately. The FBI found the planted drugs along with recording devices throughout the house. Diane's confession led to more charges against Victoria, but also immunity for Diane in exchange for testimony. Can you forgive me? Diane asked as the agents led her away for processing. Sarah couldn't answer. Forgiveness felt impossible when every person she'd trusted had been performing, lying, using her. That evening, Morrison found her in the hospital chapel, a place she'd never expected to be. I'm not religious, she said as he sat beside her. Neither was your mother. But she came here when you were born premature. Sarah looked at him in surprise. I was premature? 6 weeks, like Owen. You spent a month in NICU. Your mother lived in this chapel, praying to any deity who might listen. Your father lived in his office, trying to buy better doctors, better equipment, different kinds of love. Perhaps, or the same love expressed differently. Morrison paused. Diane Collins's mother is dying. The debt is real, over $300,000 in medical bills. Victoria found her through a medical debt collection agency. Are you defending her? I'm providing context. Good people make terrible choices when desperate. The question is, what defines them? The choice or what comes after? Sarah thought of Marcus, who had signed over custody and was cooperating fully with authorities. Of her father, trying to make amends while dying. Of herself, who had lied about her identity for 5 years. I'll pay her mother's medical bills, Sarah said quietly, anonymously, but I can't forgive her. Not yet. Your mother would be proud. She always said mercy costs more than justice, but pays better dividends. The federal courthouse in San Francisco became a circus. Media trucks lined the street. Photographers shouted Sarah's name as she walked in each morning, Owen safe with a nanny and security team her father had hired. Victoria Ashford sat at the defendant's table like a caged leopard, beautiful and furious. Her father, Robert, was being tried separately for the financial crimes. Victoria faced charges of conspiracy, fraud, and attempted harm to a child. On day 3, Sarah took the stand. Ms. Hamilton, the prosecutor began, tell us about discovering your husband's affair. Sarah testified for 2 hours, calm and precise. She presented the evidence, the recordings, the medical records. But when asked about Owen's distress during visitation, she paused. I don't believe Marcus intended harm to come to our son, she said carefully. He was manipulated by people more sophisticated in cruelty than he could imagine. Objection, Victoria's lawyer called. Speculation. Sustained. But Sarah had made her point. Marcus was a fool, not a monster. The distinction mattered for Owen's future relationship with his father. Victoria took the stand on day 4, and her testimony was a masterclass in deflection. I fell in love, she said, managing to produce tears. Yes, my father had business interests, but my feelings were real. Sarah Hamilton has systematically destroyed my life because she couldn't accept that Marcus chose me. Did you use IVF to become pregnant? The prosecutor asked. That's a private medical matter. We have the records. Victoria's composure cracked. Fine, yes. Marcus has inferior genetics. I wanted the best for my child. The courtroom murmured. Even her own lawyer winced. So you lied to Mr. Sterling about the child's paternity? I improved on reality, something Sarah Hamilton should understand considering she lied about her entire identity for 5 years. It went downhill from there. Victoria, used to controlling every situation, couldn't handle being cornered. She admitted to the planted drugs for the child's safety, the staged NICU incident as testing maternal fitness, and finally, in a burst of fury, screamed that people like Sarah Hamilton think they can play poor and still keep their billions in reserve. She's the real fraud here. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, guilty on all counts. As Victoria was led away in handcuffs, she locked eyes with Sarah. This isn't over. Yes, Sarah said quietly, it is. But she was wrong. 6 months passed. Sarah established the Hamilton Foundation, focusing on single mothers escaping abusive situations and children's art programs in underserved communities. She bought a modest house in Marin County, close enough to the city for work, but quiet enough for Owen to grow up normally. Marcus, out on bail pending his own lesser charges, had proven surprisingly dedicated to rehabilitation. He attended therapy, took parenting classes, and during his supervised visits with Owen, was patient and genuine in ways Sarah had never seen during their marriage. I was so afraid of being nobody, he admitted during one visit, watching Owen crawl across the playmat. My dad drove a bus. My mom cleaned offices. I thought if I could just climb high enough, I'd never have to feel that shame again. There's no shame in honest work, Sarah replied. I know that now. Losing everything, it's like I can finally see what actually matters. He paused. I'm going to plead guilty, Sarah. Take whatever sentence they give. Start clean after. The FBI says if you testify against Robert Ashford, you might avoid prison. I'll testify, but I won't avoid responsibility. Owen deserves a father who owns his mistakes. That evening, Jack Hamilton called. His voice was weaker now, the cancer advancing despite treatment. I want to see you, he said, both of you, please. Sarah hadn't returned to the Hamilton estate in Connecticut since she was 18. Driving through the gates with Owen in his car seat felt surreal. The mansion looked exactly the same, imposing, perfect, cold. But Jack had changed. He'd set up the nursery from Sarah's childhood for Owen, every detail preserved. I kept it all, he said, running a skeletal hand over the antique crib. Hoping someday. He lasted 3 more weeks. Near the end, he told Sarah about her mother. She wanted to leave me, when you were 15. Said I was turning you into me. Cold, calculating, caring only for the company. I promised to change, but... He coughed, specks of blood on his handkerchief. I didn't know how. When you ran, part of me was relieved. You escaped what I would have turned you into. Dad, the foundation isn't guilt money, Sarah. It's hope. That you'll build what I couldn't, something that matters beyond stock prices and quarterly earnings. Jack Hamilton died holding his grandson's hand, whispering stock tips that Sarah pretended to write down to give him peace. The funeral was international news. Sarah stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces. Business titans, politicians, celebrities, all here for Jack Hamilton's money and connections, not the man. My father was complicated, she began, brilliant and ruthless, generous and cold. He built an empire but lost his family. In his final weeks, holding his grandson, he found something he'd lost, the ability to love without calculating return on investment. That's the Jack Hamilton I'll remember. That's the grandfather Owen will hear about. After the burial, Morrison handed her an envelope. Your father's final instructions. Inside was a single sheet. Hamilton Pharmaceuticals is yours if you want it, but I suspect you'll do something better. Whatever you choose, know this. You were always the best thing I created, even when I was too blind to see it. 1 year later, the Hamilton Foundation's first annual gala was held not in a luxury hotel, but in the Oakland Community Arts Center, transformed for one night into something magical. Fairy lights strung between easels, children's artwork displayed like masterpieces, and Oakland's own youth orchestra playing. Sarah stood at the entrance greeting guests, Owen on her hip, now walking and chattering in half words. He wore a tiny tuxedo that he kept trying to pull off, making everyone laugh. The medical wing just treated its 1,000th patient, Morrison reported, looking healthier and happier in retirement, serving as the foundation's honorary chair. Free health care for single mothers. Your mother would be so proud. Marcus arrived precisely at 8, and is agreed. He'd served at 4 months in minimum security, now worked as a coding teacher at a community college. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something quieter, more real. Daddy! Owen reached for him and Sarah let Marcus take him. Hey, buddy. Marcus's eyes were wet. You look handsome. They'd worked out a custody arrangement that actually functioned. Shared holidays, regular visits, co-parenting therapy. Not friends, but not enemies. Parents trying to do better than their own parents had. Marcus, Sarah said quietly, thank you for coming. Thank you for letting me. He paused. I heard Victoria was denied parole. She was. Victoria had given birth in prison to a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy who looked nothing like Marcus. The child was in foster care, and Sarah had quietly set up a trust for his education. Every child deserved a chance, regardless of their parents' Owen said. Sarah! A voice called from across the room. Jaden, now 9, ran up with a painting. I finished it, just like you taught me. It was a portrait of Sarah and Owen, painted with the wild freedom only children possessed. She knelt to his level, studied it seriously. It's not good, Jaden, she said, and his face started to fall. It's magnificent. His smile could have powered the city. As the evening progressed, Sarah gave her speech to the assembled crowd. Tech millionaires guilt-donating beside Oakland teachers, her father's old business partners next to single mothers from the Foundation's housing program. A year ago, I learned that running from who you are doesn't change who you are. I tried to hide from the Hamilton name, the money, the responsibility. But crisis has a way of stripping away pretense. When my son was born, When I almost lost him, I discovered that privilege isn't about what you have. It's about what you do with what you have. This foundation isn't charity. It's investment. Investment in mothers who need one chance to change everything. In children who see beauty where others see blight. In the belief that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. My father built an empire worth billions. But standing here watching Jaden paint, seeing Owen take his first steps, witnessing mothers graduate from our job program, this is worth more than all the Hamilton pharmaceutical patents combined. This is legacy. This is love. This is life. So tonight I ask you to join us, not with guilt or obligation, but with hope. Because every person in this room knows what it's like to need a second chance, to need someone to see past the surface to who you really are. That's what we do here. That's what we'll keep doing. The applause was thunderous, but Sarah barely heard it. She was watching Owen toddle toward the art supplies, picking up a brush with the determined grip of someone who had something important to say. Later, as the gala wound down, Sarah stood outside looking at the star barely visible through San Francisco's glow. Morrison joined her. "Any regrets?" he asked. Sarah thought about it. The betrayal still hurt. Marcus's affair, Victoria's cruelty, Diane's deception, her father's too late awakening. But without it all, she'd still be hiding, still be playing small, afraid of the power she'd been born with. "No," she said finally. "No regrets, just lessons." "And what's the lesson?" She smiled, hearing Owen's laughter from inside where Marcus was teaching him to finger paint. That billionaire heiresses who hide their identities make terrible choices in husbands, but excellent choices in futures. Morrison chuckled. "Your mother said something similar once. Money amplifies who you are. If you're small inside, millions make you smaller. If you're generous, billions make you boundless." Was she happy, Morrison? Really happy? She had moments of pure joy, usually involving you, the rest she made peace with. That's all any of us can do, I suppose. Make peace with the choices, then make better ones. As if summoned by the conversation about choices, a notification lit up her phone. An unknown number, but the message made her blood freeze. "Congratulations on your success. You took everything from me. Only fair I return the favor. See you soon." Victoria had escaped during a prisoner transfer. The manhunt was already national news by morning. But standing there, her son laughing inside, her foundation thriving, her life rebuilt stronger than before, Sarah didn't feel fear. She felt ready. "Let her come," she said quietly to the stars. "I'm not running anymore." Because Sarah Hamilton, teacher, mother, survivor, had learned the ultimate truth. You can't hide from who you are. You can only decide what to do with it, and she had decided to rise. 6 months later, the letter arrived on a Tuesday, slipped under the door of the foundation office, despite state-of-the-art security. Sarah's hands trembled as she opened it, recognizing Victoria's handwriting. "Sarah, by the time you read this, I'll be gone, really gone. Not coming back gone. I spent 6 months planning revenge, watching you, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy your new perfect life. But then I saw him, my son. You placed him with a family in Palo Alto. Good people, better than I could ever be. You set up a trust for him. $5 million for education, therapy, whatever he needs. You, the woman I tried to destroy, secured my child's future. I could have taken Owen. I was in your house 3 nights ago, standing over his crib. He looks like you, those gray-green eyes. He's beautiful. But I realized if I took him, I'd be doing to you what I tried before, using a child as a weapon. And look how that ended. I'm disappearing. New identity, new country, new life. Maybe I'll learn to be human instead of the Ashford heir. Maybe not, but I won't be your problem anymore. Tell my son, when he's old enough, that his mother made one good choice, staying away." "We're even now, Sarah immediately called the FBI. They found evidence Victoria had indeed been in the house but taken nothing. The international manhunt continued, but she was never found. That night, Sarah held Owen extra tight, then called the family in Palo Alto. "The birth mother has terminated all parental rights," she told them. "The adoption can proceed, and the trust will ensure he has every opportunity." Thank you, the adoptive mother whispered. We'll love him. We already do. I know, Sarah said. That's why I chose you. After Owen was asleep, Sarah sat at her easel for the first time in months. She painted through the night, not her old soft landscapes or her new abstract explosions, but something different. A portrait of a woman holding a child, but the woman's face was a mirror reflecting whoever looked at it. She titled it Mother. At dawn, Marcus texted, Owen's preschool interview is at 9. Should I pick him up, or do you want to meet there? Let's go together, she replied. Present a united front. Even though we're not united, we're united in what matters. Owen. Later at the preschool, the director looked between them, clearly confused. So you're divorced but co-parenting? We're family, Sarah said simply, just not the traditional kind. Marcus nodded. We're teaching Owen that family isn't about perfect structures. It's about showing up. They got the acceptance letter that afternoon. That evening, Sarah stood before the board of Hamilton Pharmaceuticals for the first time. She'd avoided this for 2 years, but with Jack gone and the company facing hostile takeover attempts, she had to step in. I'm not my father, she began. I won't run this company like he did. But I am a Hamilton, and I protect what's mine. Hamilton Pharmaceuticals will survive, but it will transform. 50% of profits will fund free medications for low-income families. We'll slash executive bonuses and invest in research for diseases that affect the poor, not just the profitable. We'll be smaller but better. Any board member who disagrees is welcome to sell their shares. I'm buying. Half the board resigned that night. Sarah rebuilt with doctors, researchers, and activists who believed medicine was a right, not a privilege. Your father would hate this, Morrison observed. No, Sarah said. He'd understand it. He taught me that power isn't about what you can take. It's about what you can change. As she left the Hamilton building, her phone rang. An unknown number, but she recognized the voice immediately. Sarah, it's Diane. Sarah almost hung up, but didn't. My mother died yesterday, Diane continued, peacefully. The treatment you paid for gave her 2 more years. 2 years I wouldn't have had. I know you can never forgive me, but I needed you to know. Those 2 years were everything. Thank you. Diane, I'm in therapy, working through why I betrayed the only real friend I ever had. Maybe someday I'll be someone worthy of forgiveness, but not yet. Not yet. The line went dead. Sarah sat in her car for a long moment, processing the strange turns her life had taken. From hidden heiress to betrayed wife, to foundation founder, to reluctant pharmaceutical CEO. From lies to truth to something more complex than either. Her phone buzzed with a video from Marcus. Owen at the park, laughing as he went down a slide. Mama, look, I'm flying. She smiled, started the car, and headed home. Not to the Hamilton mansion or the Berkeley house full of bad memories, but to the small Marin home where Owen's drawings covered the refrigerator and the neighbor's cat kept sneaking in through the window. Home where Marcus would drop Owen off Sunday night, and they'd discuss kindergarten applications over coffee like normal divorced parents. Where Morrison would visit for dinner and tell embarrassing stories about her father. Where Jaden and the other kids from the center would come for art lessons in her garage studio. It wasn't the life she'd planned. It was messier, harder, more complicated than anything she could have imagined. But it was real. It was hers. And it was enough. No, it was everything. As she pulled into her driveway, Owen ran out, still in his pajamas despite it being afternoon. Mama, Daddy taught me to paint trees. Want to see? I want to see everything, she said, scooping him up, his weight solid and real in her arms. Behind them, the sun set over the bay, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and possibility. Sarah Hamilton had spent years running from her name, her money, her power. But in losing everything, she'd found something worth more than billions. The courage to be exactly who she was. All of it.